for folks who don't know, the Free State Project is a movement of voluntary human action where we are trying to concentrate libertarians in the state of New Hampshire.
I think we've done more in the last decade than every other libertarian movement combined has accomplished in the last 5 decades.
Are my friends and my neighbors who are willing to stand against tyranny, make their voices heard, and have a goddamn impact.
You have a problem where too many people are afraid to say what they believe in, let alone actually do something about it. If you're afraid to stand outside the TSA line and piss off 97% of people who are waiting to just take the arm dildo up their ass for 5 seconds, then you're probably not ever going to make the change.
Free State Project, again, it's 1% of the Free State movement.
I am a friend of the Free State Project.
And would you encourage people to check it out?
Absolutely. Check it out. Find out. If you like it, join and continue the effort.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, libertarians and anarchists, your movers, natives, and those on your way, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Free State Live, where you can hear about all the ways you can live free or thrive in the free state of New Hampshire. But first and foremost, time to welcome back our hosts and guests. I'm Justin O'Donnell, former Libertarian candidate for U.S. Senate and host of the Subversive podcast. And joining me tonight, Manchester memesman, local New Hampshire native, and Bitcoin enthusiast, Bill Barker. How are you, Bill?
What's happening, man? I'm buying Bitcoin all day today.
All day today. It's on sale, so you can't avoid it.
Epic sale.
And keyboard. Oh, no, we don't have Kevin tonight. We got back the one, the only author, activist, Free State Project board member, host of the Carla Garrick Show, and the Queen Quill herself, Carla Garrick. How are you, Carla?
Hi, I am very well, and I'm super psyched about our guest tonight. So
I know I am as well, because is a former executive of the Bitcoin Foundation, the person who first introduced me to Bitcoin back when it was still under $100, back when it was the time to jump in. It's still always the time because crypto only goes up. It sometimes goes on sale, though.
Sometimes it goes down.
No, it goes on sale, Carla. We're always in for a ride up. Now candidate for office and renowned public school board troll, Bruce Fenton. How are you, Bruce? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good to see you guys. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. So thank you for coming on. I mean, those of you who haven't paid attention to the news today, because today's been one heck of a fun news day to just see how things are going. The world's spinning out of control. We're in an election year, so it's always wild in New Hampshire. The economy decided to take a shitter, and gas is almost $5.50 a gallon in some places. It's almost over $10 a gallon in California. I don't know why people still live there. But kids are finally back to school, but they're arguing about bringing masks back now in some states, and it's just wild and crazy, and I can't understand why. The Prime Minister of Canada got COVID again for the 3rd time after his 4th booster.
Oh no! Is he okay?
Oh, he's tweeting about
his duties.
He's tweeting about how important it is to enforce gun control now that he has COVID.
Okay, he's going to be able to keep the tyranny up.
But I think the big news for all of us today is Bitcoin's on sale. Huge sale, fire sale. Great day to increase your holdings because the dollar was inflated by an ungodly amount. But Bruce, you've touched all of these aspects. You're a financial analyst and financial planner. You're huge into crypto. You're now a politician, technically. You're a activist who bothers your local school board about your kids' education. What don't you do anymore?
Statism.
that is a good answer, sir.
It's fun. So, me and Bruce, we first met back when we both lived in Massachusetts, and I was very involved in the Libertarian Party of Massachusetts, and tried to get Bruce more involved. But Bruce has always been the live free, don't try and get mired in the politics until now. I think this is the first time I've seen you actually get politically involved. Now that you're running for office,
they push enough that the leave me alone people finally get annoyed enough that we say we're going to get in the ring.
Yeah. So, I mean, what was your story? Because you've always been one of the leave me alone people, one of the financial freedom people, the crypto anarchists who just kind of found a way, to put yourself in a position where you could, as much as you could possibly, just ignore the government. But what was your path to that point? What was your path to libertarianism and to the point where you now are a free stater living in New Hampshire?
Yeah, wow. Like a lot of people, it started with Ron Paul, I think, was the first person that really kind of illustrated these sort of things. There was a lot of people that I thought made sense, that were cool. I really liked the old Free to Choose videos with Milton Friedman talking about the economy and how it works from a free market standpoint. But it was really Ron Paul around that movement with the first iteration of the Tea Party that I really got excited about this stuff. I knew Dr. Paul for, I knew of his work for a couple of years before that. But I think it's something that you have to really think about. So I thought a lot about these principles of liberty and freedom and, non-aggression, and then hanging around with the people. I mean, that's one of the most eye-opening things. I started having more friends that were kind of libertarians and free staters. And then I heard about Pork Fest, and I was excited. And I remember distinctly talking to somebody about Pork Fest because I was talking about moving down the libertarian road. And I said, yeah, in high school, I was a Republican, kind of diehard Republican. And then I discovered these, and there was times actually with the war, I was more on the Democrat side. I wasn't a Democrat, but I was very, very anti-war. So I was extremely unhappy with George Bush. So I didn't want to identify myself as a Republican. And then I kind of found my home with these. I used to call myself an independent, but I found my home with these libertarians. And then somebody mentioned Pork Fest, and they said, well, if you can really get onboarded with that, you can come there and that'll make you want to be an anarchist. So I went to Pork Fest and met great people, and just how it is. It's a community. We are all friends on Facebook and social. At the time, it was Facebook. This is 10 years ago. And I remember, just hearing more and more people. I mean, actually, it was more like 15 years ago that I was first kind of onboarded into this. But over the process, just hearing from all these brilliant minds, characters in our community who, they'll go to court over parking tickets, and people like Carla who've won important lawsuits and things like that. I mean, it's just a great community, and it's kind of fun. It's sort of fun. People know that we're a bunch of leave me alone types, and that's really exciting. So I signed the pledge 10 years ago or so. And then my family and I moved up here 6 years ago, and we've been very happy about that decision. And thanks, Carla.
You're welcome. I like to give people the gift of New Hampshire. I mean, I do genuinely feel like it's such a well-kept secret, and I am starting to understand why a lot of people were like, stop telling people how great it is here. But now it's like we get to tell good people who really want to come and build stuff and figure out a future. You mentioned Dr. Paul, and I think one of the things that was so important about his message that certainly resonated with me was that anti-war stance and this notion of explaining to people this ethical stance of non-aggression, that we don't, think people should be going around solving their problems with violence, like, use your words. And sorry for the folks back home, words are not violence. Ideas may make you uncomfortable, but it's just an idea, and all you got to do is wrap your head around it. So once you had wrapped your head, so can I ask, was it a Bitcoiner you originally heard about Pork Fest from? Like, was it Roger or one of those?
Probably was. It might have been Matthew Roach. Matthew
cool.
Roach, okay. I think I heard a lot about Pork Fest, and I think he was one of the first people I heard about Bitcoin from. And then, I got to learn about Roger and see, he was a great and well-known speaker at the time. Eric Voorhees. I remember, it's very interesting. I saw Eric Voorhees speak at Pork Fest in 2000, whatever was it, 12 or 13. And I said, this guy is so cool. I want to be friends with this guy. And sure enough, we became friends, years later, because he just had such a great philosophy, and he's so articulate with the way he described it. And there's a lot of folks like that in this community, a lot of really, really sharp people in this community. They know the law. They're not going to be challenged on, on different violations of their freedom, very good sound principles. And when somebody knows what they know what they believe, and they have a solid moral foundation, it's hard to argue with those people, which is why I think they win over a lot of people, because you can put one of us in a group of I was arguing with kind of a diehard socialist the other day, and somebody working with me kind of pulled me away. They're like, "No, don't waste your time, Bruce. Come on, we got to get rolling." I'm like, "No. Give me 5 more minutes. I'm gonna show them our way, because our ideas are right. Peace is right." And when I was on the anti-war movement against Bush, I dealt with a lot of Democrats and a lot of people who are in favor of peace. And, most of the people kind of, even our opponents, most of them are good people. Some are evil for sure. Don't forget them. But a lot of them are really good people, and they're just kind of misguided or haven't thought about these ideas of liberty and freedom. They're unusual ideas. And by the way, that goes for globally too. We're lucky in America where at least we have this kind of libertarian ideals. But in the Middle East where I used to live, I was always seeking out the libertarians. It's very, very tricky to find them. There's a lot of cultures and places and countries where there's no libertarian party, there's no real libertarian movement. It's just status versus status, and we can see that in the results.
So Bruce, as a free stater and as somebody who you're poking your head into politics, I guess, but you've always like kind of found, you're saying it's hard for libertarians to find each other. Do you think that sometimes we get like mired in shame about the unpopularity of our opinions? And secondly, I know you have a reputation for like being kind of like punk rock, like, yeah, I'm proud to be a free state, like I'm proudly a libertarian, and really like being out there with it. How do you get there?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a more recent thing. It's interesting with some of the changes that I've done, recently with getting more into it and running and that kind of thing. It was funny because when I first moved to New Hampshire 6 years ago, I said to a couple people, like our first realtor, I said, "Hey, I'm a free stater," and they're like, "Uh-oh," they were a little scared, and because I just assumed that everybody, it's like peanut butter and jelly or Star Wars, or like why wouldn't anybody like it? I just assumed that everybody loved this movement, and when I moved up, I was kind of surprised. I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting. Not everybody loves it," so I was kind of quiet about it. Just I actually, despite being very controversial on a lot of things, I actually really like to make friends, and I like to find common ground, and I like to reach out to people who I disagree with, whether they're Democrats or socialists or far right extremists or whatever. And in crypto, I'm known as the one person who's friends with everybody. I don't think anybody has ever had an event where you've had Safety and Adam Back and Justin Sun and Vitalik and Roger Ver, all at the same event. I have people that don't like each other in the industry, and I try and be friends with everybody. So I was kind of, when I found out it was so controversial, I was kind of a little more quiet about kind of advertising it. But then it sort of it became kind of a funny thing because it's attacked, and people, you see these memes that say, free staters are a bunch of extremists or they're trying to take over. So that just, that makes my kind of inner troll and my inner competitive spirit come out, and I'm like, well, I'm one, because I had some people like on a couple people that come across on social media, they're like, oh, you know what, you seem like a good guy, but watch out for those free staters. I'm like, no, I am one. And then more recently I've been just totally open about it, and I think it's good, and I think there should be many shades of free stater, just as there's many shades of libertarian and Republican and Democrats too,
and Bitcoiner.
Yeah, exactly. It's a broad and complex world with a lot of different kind of people and beliefs. So I think we should welcome everybody.
Yeah, and I think if we do want to keep building the community, or at least move on with this concentration thing, we kind of have to be loud about it, right? With being quiet about it and being like secret libertarians or secret free staters. Like, we never know how many of us there actually are.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more.
Yeah, I think there really are too. I'm from here. I grew up here, and I had no idea that this was here. This was like this until last year.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's also that, if you don't put yourself out there and if you don't tell people, then someone else is defining what the brand is, for lack of a better thing, right? So
Right.
We're individualists. So it's like, well, I'm a free stater, and people will be like, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, whatever you think I am is what I am, and other people are different.
Exactly.
Remember, that's how the world works. Everyone's an individual. So, there is no collective. The one question I do get a lot, I don't know if you've run into this, but journalists and reporters will be like, well, what is a free stater? And I now always just answer with the non-aggression principle. And it works because it immediately frames things by what I believe is our driving principle, right? Like we are literally saying we are the peace movement. There is no, the Democrats, you mentioned that, they are not the peace movement. They're equally the war movement. Look at what's going on in the Ukraine. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I
right?
say one of the worst things Barack Obama did, as far as his legacy goes, was destroying the anti-war left.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one of the last things I did in New York City before I moved out here was go to a massive, I think there were more than 500,000 people who marched against the war, and it got less than 30 seconds on CNN once, and that was the only coverage. And that was one of those aha moments for me. So Bruce, tell us your escape from and come to New Hampshire story. What did that look like?
Yeah, so we had signed the pledge and then we started looking for a place. I was pretty picky. I wanted kind of, I wanted a place that had water, and I wanted, ocean access. I wanted a lot of land, a lot of privacy. And so it wasn't easy to find. It took us a while to find it. And we found the perfect place. I mean, we're so blessed to have one of the coolest places in New Hampshire, I think.
It
Certainly
really
one of the
is.
most historic. It's super historic too. I don't know if you probably know the story on it. There was it's got a long history of protection of life, liberty, and property, because in 1694 it was attacked by about 100 people, and the house next door, very sadly, 15 people were killed. They're buried not even 150 feet from where I'm doing this podcast right now. And then the Native Americans, led by French troops, marched down the road to kind of where our dock is. There was a little house there, and the guy who was there was a captain in the military, and his place was supposed to be a garrison where everybody would go to hide, but they just didn't have time. The attack was so fast. But he was there, and he sent his family out on a boat right up into the little bay up Oyster River. And then he single-handedly fought him off. He fought off many dozens of people, maybe as many as 100, because he had very high walls and he had a lot of weapons. And he pretended that he was a whole battalion. So he'd shout out commands, Grenadiers, one, fire. And then he'd run over to another window, shoot some shots off, and be like, whatever. And they thought that it was a big, group of soldiers. And they didn't want to lose more life, so after about 8 or 9 hours, they gave up. So this is sort of the perfect place. It was kind of sort of the coolest place, this beautiful farm. And once we found that, we bought it. Actually, yeah, we bought it, and then we moved to Portsmouth. We were planning on just using this for weekends, and we moved to Portsmouth like a couple of years before. And which was really fun. I love that town. I highly recommend it to anybody to visit who hasn't. If you're coming to New Hampshire for the first time, it's a great place to check out. Really fun, cute, touristy town, and we loved it. And then when all the craziness started with the lockdowns and the movement passes and this nonsense, my office in Portsmouth was one of the first offices to get shut down. I don't own the building. I was renting, and so we got out of Dodge and we came up here to the country, and we've been here ever since. And we're just going to stay here now forever.
See, that is a plus of COVID.
Yeah. Well, we were going to anyway. Our plan was always to move up here eventually. We had quite a bit of work to do on it. We did a couple of years of construction to get the place nice. So yeah, we moved out of Massachusetts, or also known as Taxachusetts. We came up here, and what a great community. I mean, you're very welcomed when you come here. There's moving and all kinds of parties, and there's a lot of people that are in this movement that share. And like I say, there's different shades of it. All kinds of different types of people. It's a different shade than kind of what you might call classic libertarians or Libertarian Party people. There's a lot of free staters that may not be into some of the libertarian politics, right, which are sometimes somewhat conflicting, but they're just leave me aloneists and people who want to pursue life, liberty, and having government just be limited to protecting life, liberty, and property.
You have some fans. People are excited to see you're on the show tonight.
Well, no, so to that point, like Bruce, everyone, if anybody doesn't know what's happened in the past 2 years, I want to know what rock you live under and if it's on the market so I can move in, because it sounds like you had a great escape from reality for the past couple of years. But like 2 years ago,
you would have been very easily classified as one of the leave me alones. I'm not getting politically involved. I'm living my life and being as free as I can. And now you're running for U.S. Senate. You've spent time at your local school boards. You've gone after public officials. Like, was there, like, aside from just the pandemic, the lockdowns, and how it affected your kids and your family and your business, like, what was the feeling like in that kind of a transition for you? Is leave me alone libertarian and free stater, just trying to be as free as you can, to screw it, I'm going to be the one fighting for it?
You know, it was really so I had these principles of liberty going back to 15 years or so to Ron Paul, anti-war going back 20 years. I was protesting the first Iraq war, then the second Iraq war. You know, so I had libertarian principles before I knew what they were. I was always pro peace, anti-war, and also kind of a rebel all my life throughout high school and everything. I liked Ross Perot when he ran as an independent. You know, I like people kind of shaking up things. But I did develop solid liberty principles and understanding non-aggression and the proper role of, at least what I think is the proper role of government. So I had that foundation. And then coming into this last couple years with this tyranny, like many people, there's a lot of people who have had anxiety and stress over this. I had a lot of stress and anxiety, particularly early on. It really, really bothered me. I wasn't pleasant to be around in, say, the first 6 months of this. It was really stressing me because I felt like losing control. I felt like our everything is falling apart. I couldn't believe what they're able to do, and I couldn't believe that people were going on with this. And the massive amounts of bad information and propaganda and the censorship and all of these things. The only way that I could describe it is as evil. And I got to thinking about evil a lot, and I had several bad months where I was quite stressed and quite bothered and troubled about this. And I said, well, how do you fight evil? I mean, how do you fight actual evil, and what is going on? And I meditated and prayed, and I thought about good, good versus evil, and God versus evil, and how do I fight this kind of thing? And I kind of came to a revelation that we've got to fight this. It's actual real evil, and it's really, really significant, and it's something unlike what any of us have ever seen in our lifetimes. This isn't about fighting for a gas tax or legalization of weed or anything, which are all great goals. I'm talking about true global evil like we've never seen before, the kind of things that we just couldn't imagine happening. And I said, I have to fight this. I have to fight it. And once I started fighting it, I felt a lot better about it. That anxiety went away. I said, I'm on the path of good. I'm fighting for what's right. I know it's right. And I know that the other side is evil. I know that these things are evil. And that's encouraging, whether you're a person of faith or not. If you are of faith, you can say, this is kind of God's plan to say, good versus evil. Or if you just believe in good versus evil and you're not a person of faith, the same thing. Whether you're driven by God or good, though, either one of those is a good motivation. Say, I want to do the right thing, and I want to fight for good, and I want to fight for love and peace and all of the things that are great in our world, because what we're seeing right now is the opposite of that. And those of us who understand government and force and libertarianism, and we understand the dangers of statism and democide and the 300 million people killed by their own governments over the last century and these kind of things, we understand what we're fighting here. This isn't just, R versus D or your crazy friend from high school who has bad takes on guns. This is actual, real, serious evil. And so I felt like I had to do something about that. And I feel good about it. I feel like I'm on a good path. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. I may or may not succeed. It may work in a different way than I plan. There's all kinds of other factors, but I feel like at least if I'm on the right path and a straight path and the path to try and do good, I feel like that's something I am happy with, and that puts me at peace.
Well, it's a path I think you've been on the whole time, because like I said, when I first met you, you were just, all you cared about was telling people about Bitcoin all the time, and it was great. And I told the story on the Twitter space the other night when we were chatting. For those of you who don't know, my first ever time I tried to run for public office was actually back when I still lived in Massachusetts, and Bruce was my first campaign donation, and he donated in Bitcoin back in 2015, and I really wish we held on to that Bitcoin instead of spending it to pay petitioners for me. But the next year, I invited you to the Libertarian Convention in Massachusetts, and you introduced an entire room of people who are now a lot wealthier than they would have been had you not spoken at that dinner and got everyone buying. I think almost everyone in the room bought Bitcoin that night.
I've run into a few people from that very room, and they thanked me for that. So
yeah,
that's good. One of my regrets, because I came from finance and I've always been conservative about telling people what to do. I'm really good at giving advice if people ask, but I don't like giving unsolicited advice, and I'm also cautious about pushing an investment. One of my regrets is I wish I would have told more people to buy, back in those days, and I've rectified that. I'm being a little bit more, bullish in telling people, fiat's a melting ice cube, and we got to look for alternatives.
Well, to that point, like fiat's a melting ice cube. Like we've now seen like the Fed is saying 8% inflation. I don't think anybody believes that as an accurate number.
Yeah,
like,
Shadow Stats is at 18.
Yeah, because it feels like the worst inflation possibly imaginable. I'm seeing the highest gas prices. Housing is overinflated, difficult to come by. Like the dollar feels like it's dying. The dollar feels like it's collapsing. To anybody who studied early Europe, like early American, mid-American, and late European history, it feels like we're looking at a Weimar Republic type of a situation with the currency just collapsing and things just exponentially increasing in price. Like you as a Bitcoiner, as a crypto maximalist, not a Bitcoin maximalist, is like an alternative currency. Like how is it you can't see all your history with Bitcoin as activism like that? And maybe do you think, what is the future of Bitcoin or crypto in general, and how it can maybe solve some of the major problems we're seeing today that libertarians like us and other free staters are trying to accomplish at the state and local level, working in government, that might actually be accomplished outside of government with just cryptocurrency?
Yeah, it's a great question, because no matter what happens, if in politics, with me running for office, there's nothing I can do, elected or not, there's nothing I can do that's going to be as impactful as Bitcoin. I can't go in Senate, even if somebody had a higher office, doesn't even matter the country. There's nothing anybody can do in any office that can be as powerful as Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the people's money. It is powered by, not one or two or a dozen people, and it's not, 100 big shots. It's millions and millions of people on this network. And that's more powerful than any single person, elected official, tyrant, billionaire, or anybody else. So the way that it can create peace and prosperity is because the root of many of these problems, statism has to be paid for by something, and they pay for it by stealing our money or by devaluing our money, printing money from thin air. And the money is profoundly broken. And it's actually really evil. And it's an interesting thing to say fiat is evil. It sounds almost like something that a crazy person or people in our circles who they think are crazy would say. And I say this in meetings sometimes with kind of conservative people that may not be familiar with this term. It might sound unpatriotic or something, or it might sound sensational or something. But I say, no, it really is actually evil. And it's in all of the many of the great religions, the three great religions, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, all have prohibitions against this kind of debt, which is exactly what we're seeing. They're all, everybody's ignoring their own religion. A few billion people on earth, all Christians and all Muslims and all Jews, pretty much 99% of them are ignoring their own scriptures, which are against this, because it is, and again, not it's not about, regardless of whether you're religious or not, it's just actual evil. And that sounds crazy. It's not like I'm saying like, oh, I don't like this bank or they're my competitor or something. No, the reason it's actual evil is because it enables very, very, very evil things to happen that wouldn't happen without that money system. So if we had a sound money system where we all controlled our money, especially if they couldn't just seize it from us or print it from thin air, then they'd have to come and ask for us, or they'd have to come and point a gun and say, give it to me. And that would be a much higher hurdle. So they wouldn't really be able to do that if they come to Carla and say, Carla, can I have 70 grand? And she says, why? And they say, I want to put people with forbidden plants in a cage for a year, and then next year I want another 70 grand. Carla's going to say, no, thank you. And so are a lot of other people. But if they can print it from thin air, they don't need to. So they can end up with more people in prison than we had in Soviet gulags, and more people than they have in China or any other country per capita. We have this huge number of people in prison. Same with bombing people in Syria or whatever other crazy thing we're going to do. If taxpayers had to pay for that, in World War II, we were fighting the Nazis and the Axis powers, and Japan, who had attacked our shores. They attacked our own country. And what did they do? They had to get war heroes and actresses and actors and singers to go around America and beg people for money. They had to say, hey, listen, Carla, we these Nazis are real bad, and here's why. And they just attacked us, and here's what's happening. And if we don't fight them, they're going to do what they did in Europe, and they're actually going to come over here. And then even then, it was kind of hard to raise the money. So there was accountability, and that was a pretty good cause. I would have definitely kicked in money to fight the Nazis. And as anti-tax as I am, I would have probably supported taxes, and I would have supported a lot of what we did as a nation to defend against that evil. But now we have this slippery slope where it doesn't need to be Nazis. It can just be a whim. It can be a whimsical idea because somebody wants to bomb somebody else because they of ratings or some other crazy thing. They can print money from thin air. They don't have to ask you. They don't have to make a case. Nobody made a case to you. Nobody even the government didn't come to us and say, oh, here's why we're taking X number of billions and bombing Syria. I mean, look at this. They just gave Ukraine the budget essentially of like the eighth largest military in the world, just like that, because of a couple memes and a couple questionable.
Well, it's because the Bidens have billions they have to launder somewhere.
Yeah. Quite curious, this whole Ukraine connection. I mean, what a bizarre thing, that Hunter was over there making millions and millions and millions of dollars from Zelensky. And people forget that. People don't remember that Trump was impeached twice. The first time was over a phone call with Zelensky.
Not giving him the money. For trying to,
Hey, so keeping along with that sort of crypto line, if you put on your dream hat, right? We're in imagination corner for a second. What kind of landscape could you see? Like if you were, I don't know, president of New Hampshire for a day, what would you like? How can we design New Hampshire? I know you're running for federal office, and I'll always blame you for that, but I have a lot of forgiveness in my heart, and someone's got to do the heavy lifting no one wants to do. So I guess thank you. But how do we make New Hampshire crypto haven? We get everyone here. How would you go about that?
One way is to get the feds off our back so we have more sovereignty to do more things. I mean, wouldn't it be cool if we could have our own version of the SEC or our own CFTC or, just make some of this stuff optional. Our state legislator is awesome. And it would be great if we had that power in our own state to just, because some things we can't discount, like Wyoming made an effort to do a good crypto bill, and they have, I'm talking about Wyoming itself, the state bill. But they can't you can't cancel the SEC. That's federal. So, one thing that I'm working on is trying to, reduce these federal things at a state level. I think, obviously, the low hanging fruit is the kind of things that our, Free State Caucus and others have been doing, which is just, making it more free and more, easier for businesses and people to come here and do things. And I think kind of there's something about a community, there's a lot of people. I mean, it's not a coincidence that we've had a record number of movers in the last 2 years, because a lot of people were on the fence, or a lot of people in, especially the crazy places like Seattle and California and stuff like that, New York, they just can't be there anymore. So, part of it is a shared community, which we're seeing in a lot of places in the world, Austin and Puerto Rico and New Hampshire and stuff, where like-minded people are kind of banding together and sharing, these ideas of peace and freedom and liberty. So, I mean, those are some of the main things I can think of. I think just keep doing what we're doing. We're winning. I mean, we're crushing it. It's a great success story, and it's a national success story that they kind of can't ignore anymore. And that's why we're starting to see more, national awareness of this awesome movement that we're all a part of.
Yeah.
No, you say we can't cancel the SEC, but we are trying to cancel the ATF in New Hampshire. And we're getting pretty close to succeeding at that. So I'm not sure we can't cancel the SEC. It might just have to take a different approach.
Yeah, let's try for sure. I mean, I'd love to see more of these things. I think one of the few legitimate uses of government is to protect you from other government. So to the extent that the state can protect you from the feds, or if the feds can protect you from anybody else, the only kind of laws that I would like to see passed, new laws, are ones that get rid of old all laws, or they specifically say, you know, the federal government shall not, or the whatever government, your town. Also, you know, things like your town, you know, we get into things like school boards and stuff. You know, petty tyrants can cause a lot of damage and misery to people as well, sometimes even death. So we need government to protect and say, hey, your town can't do this, or your state can't do this. And ideally, the way it should work is that the federal government should be the highest authority to say, no, governor, legislator, state senator, you can't do this. These are the people's rights, and they should go in and actually protect their civil rights. So, for example, if you had a town sheriff or a town manager who was trying to, you know, ban guns, the feds should come in and arrest that person or stop them from doing that. That's one of the few legitimate roles of government, is to prevent other government from hurting you, including foreign governments. You know,
so that's actually that's a philosophy that almost flies in the face of a lot of what people think libertarianism and anarchy and even classical liberalism is, but with localization and decentralization, by leaving all decisions to the most local level possible, because you know better than your neighborhood knows better than your town knows better than your state knows better than your country how to handle its jurisdiction in an area. But to say like the only role of a higher power is to tell the local jurisdiction that it can't do something, like at what point, where do we cross the line? Because if it's yes, town, you can't have building codes to prohibit people from building an accessory dwelling in their backyard. Everyone thought that was great. Everyone thought that was awesome. But then if the state can come in and say, oh, town, you can't allow Uber to operate in your town.
Yeah.
Or you can't allow competitive cable services. Like you can't let Starlink in the area. Like at what point, like how do you draw the line there to protect
well, I think you need laws that say they can't make a law to prevent Uber. You know, if you have any law, you know, you have to say that people have a right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They have a right to voluntary transactions. They have a right to interact with whoever they want. And where I draw the line is real simple. You guys all know it. It's when somebody's pulling a gun on somebody. So if somebody's doing their thing and they want to pull a Rosa Parks and say no to your stupid rule, and somebody needs a gun on them, well, then they're probably wrong. It's a very, very heavy thing to threaten somebody with force. And there are times when that's justified. I mean, if somebody comes down to my place and swinging a gun around, then that may be justified to use force against them. Sure. So there's times that's okay. But, you know.
Yeah, and to clarify.
The petty tyrants, when they're going around saying, you know, you've got to wear a political signal on your face, or you've got to do this, you know, nanny state type of stuff, because it's so hard. And I noticed this with school boards and things like that. It's so hard to fight all of these different fights at once. And, you know, especially some of these town things, it's very like, it's almost so small, it's hard to fight. You know, it's like these little insidious little meetings, and, you know, very, very difficult to fire people. You know, sometimes it's just tricky. So you could have some petty tyrant who stomps all over somebody's rights and says, you know, I don't want movies in this theater playing rated R movies, and I don't want you doing that, and you can't have a grill after 7 o'clock, and you can't have
control
Uber.
Freaks, I call them. Those
and so yeah, I mean, if you could have something that says, you know, this power, like they, you know, they would have to be like, they shall not, you know, use force, shall not enforce these kind of things, shall not have any rules that interfere with anybody's life, liberty, and property, which I define quite broadly. You know, I just want people to be able to do their own thing and mind their own business, as long as they're not hurting anybody else. You know, the difference is if there's a victim. You know, if somebody else is a victim and you say they've hurt my life, liberty, and property, well, then that's a different thing. Those are legitimate laws for towns or any other petty, you know, I guess you wouldn't be a petty tyrant. You could just be a regular doing what town people are supposed to do, protecting the rights of their people. But yeah, you do have to be careful, you know, because I don't like either. I mean, there's the top down saying, oh, no, leave this alone. Let's just put it at the state level and the local level. It's like, well, yeah, but those people can be horrible also, you know? So I don't want to have, you know, a lot of people say, well, like, oh, let's not regulate this at the federal level, we'll regulate it at the state level. It's like, no, how about we just leave it alone entirely? Don't regulate it at all. Just stay out of our business. And to the extent that we do have any authorities who say anything, it's just get out of the way and let people live their own lives and do their own thing peacefully.
I think one of the more concrete examples of it happening is where what concerns me is there's a handful of towns in New Hampshire, very small towns, very, very small populations, but a lot of open area, and who have a aesthetic and a lifestyle that the residents enjoy and want to keep that way. And they have incredibly strict zoning laws about what can be built there, how it has to look, because that's how they want it. And that's within their right to do, because their local community decided they didn't want drive-thrus in the town. They didn't want any restaurant that was owned by a chain in the town. It only be locally owned small cafes, no drive-thrus, nothing. I guess I fear that the state coming in and saying you can't prohibit a property owner from building a chain restaurant on their property ruins what people loved about their small town.
Yeah, but
at the same time, property rights matter.
Texas allows people,
right?
Texas doesn't have these nanny state zoning things, and it works all right. You know, the idea that we need petty locals to say whether you can have a drive-through or not, like, I don't know. I mean, if somebody buys the land, they should be able to do whatever they want with it.
I agree with you entirely in principle. It's just at what threshold of a local population? Like, is it consensus from 100% of local population can ban that from somebody? Is it 75%?
Well, if it's 100%, then they don't need a rule. You know, if you have, because we got to protect the individual. If one person who escapes from one of these hellholes, they come from Australia or New Zealand or Massachusetts or Seattle or California, and they come here and this is their dream, and all they can afford is something in some remote community where everybody's a bunch of nannies who doesn't want them to have a drive-through, and all they ever dreamed of was a drive-through. I don't think that's their right or anybody else's right. If they don't want them there, they can buy the place or they can buy them out or whatever. You know, I'd like to see everybody do everything. I'd like to see zoning, you know, gotten rid of. You know, I mean, it's the idea that some people get to say that, you know, somebody else can't do something. You know, it's like kind of like tough, you know, buy the place yourself if you want, you know.
No, at the same time, I look at Manchester, New Hampshire here, and we have zoning laws that prohibit the construction of new single family and multifamily housing. And now look, housing prices are through the roof, and we have a rising homeless population that's going out of control. So I see both sides of it, and it just worries me.
And the thing with the zoning, you know, there's always these horror stories. This is a lot of the statism kind of things that they, you know, they worry like, oh, if we didn't have occupational licensing, we'd have car mechanics doing brain surgery. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. That would never happen, you know. Or
I would go to that doctor for my first mural link.
Exactly. You know, or if we didn't have zoning, we're going to have strip clubs in on the seacoast in Rye or something. No, we won't. You know, you really won't. Like, you know, you those of you who've been to my house, you know, it's really remote, really quiet. You know, it's very, very strict zoning, probably one of the strictest towns. But the idea that, like, if we didn't have the zoning, that somebody would build a strip club or something here, it's just not really a thing, because they wouldn't get any business. It would go out of business. You know, there's nobody here. So nobody's going to go and build some, you know, big noisy nightclub in the middle of the boonies in some remote place. They're going to want to do it in a city or you know, the typical places. So it kind of all works out. I mean, if you look at Texas, it's a little odd sometimes, because you'll have like $1 zillion mansion and then a little weird taco stand and then something else and then a gas station, but it kind of works out okay, you know.
You might get a strip club in Durham.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, it's sort of the government's role is to be the Cassandra, and it's sort of like, I always explain it as they're arguing about bad things that might happen in the future. So they do awful things in the now, and they're like, well, I'm going to do this really bad thing right now because a worse thing's going to happen in the future. And I'm like, how about you just stop doing the bad thing in the now, right? Yes. So those future things is how they scare people, right? Like everyone, you know, it's like these awful things are going to happen. And it's like, can we stop with the catastrophizing? We are literally driving people insane. The messaging, you know, I mean, it breaks my heart when I see these kids. I saw some march and the kids were literally saying things like, I wish my parents had aborted me.
Oh.
And, you know, and I was like, wow, like, you know, and the climate change insanity and all of this, you know, and to talk about the censorship where they actually started taking down the signs, because we would have all the old headlines from like the 70s, right? Oh, the world's going to be underwater in 20 years. We're all going to die, blah, 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 right? And of course, now we can take those things and we can just unpack it and we can make one meme, 4 pictures, and any idiot can understand it. So they were like, oh, we got to censor this.
Yep.
So, Bruce, do you have a good, like, I hate the AI censor story? Did you run into anything over the past 2 years that just kind of like blew your mind? I'll give you an example. I posted a meme that said they're not, it basically said they're planning the food shortages. It's the guy from Mad Men and he's got his martini and it's like, they're planning the food shortages. I posted it. A month later, I got a warning that said it's missing context. And I was like, why did you come back a month later on this? Because now I'm like, you guys are planning the food shortages. So did you run into some kind of censorship or?
Yeah, there's been some crazy ones. My my Facebook has had advertising approved for 16 years and it got shut off the minute I announced I was running for office. So that's interesting.
Wow.
And I also got flagged on a post where I said politicians shouldn't have, I said scientists disguised as politicians shouldn't have this power to shut down our nation. And that got shut, that post. Now, my favorite one, you're going to love this. My favorite one of all, I made a post. I got to get the wording exact, but it was something to the effect of, politicians and tyranny are destroying our nation. That's all it said. And they said, get the facts about COVID. I said, hey, I didn't mention COVID. What, are you self-conscious? What made you think I was talking about COVID?
If the shoe fits.
Tyranny.
Yeah, if the
I
shoe
didn't
fits.
mention COVID in the tweet at all. And I still got the misinformation speech. So I thought that was kind of funny. I said, well, some self-conscious censor is sitting there and I'm mentioning tyranny and they put a COVID flag. So they knew I was talking about COVID, even though I didn't say it. And that kind of shows like, oh, you must know it's tyranny if you're saying
right. Well, you see, now what I wonder is if that's all the AI. So I think there's a lot of scraping and a lot of the censorship that's happening that is not human driven. Maybe the humans are looking at it on a second pass, but I have started to see where art is getting flagged as memes. Part of memes is really that it is art. It's like I'm making fun of something. It's like a cartoon. And they're starting to fact check it as if it's literal. By way of example, I posted a photo of Davos and I was making fun of them, trying to tell us how to spend our carbon footprints with all their private jets there. And it got fact checked because the photos weren't from 2022 Davos. It was from 2016 Davos. And I was like, wow, okay. So here's my question. Have you been following this whole thing about the AI has become sentient? The Google engineer that got fired yesterday, right? He said it's the, It's the Lambda, the language bot that they wrote that does the dialogue chat, but it learned to like skip forward and it's not, the literal, it seems like you're talking to someone at least from, one of the stans. It's, it's on its way. And so I want to know, do we think, what do you think about it? You must have some opinions about, where we're going with this.
Yeah, we just got to watch out. The people pulling the strings behind all this are people with really bad ideas. And it's a shame that, I wish everybody could have gone to Porkfest and I wish everybody was at least exposed, because I really believe that a lot of people, I think these ideas are so right that if people were exposed that they would come aboard. And so the problem is you have like bad programming, garbage in, garbage out, you have kind of, and I don't know enough to say this about the current AI thing with Google and others, but we all know how these companies think and how the people at these companies think. They tend to be, very top down, heavy, authoritarian, state driven, and just kind of bad ideas. The very fundamental idea that misinformation is bad or that somebody needs to second guess something. And like you say, it's humor, things like sarcasm. I've seen a lot of flags on sarcasm now. So you can say like, some extremely sarcastic comment like, oh yeah, I guess George Soros is just getting ready to put us all in FEMA camps. And it's obviously sarcasm. And somebody will say like, well, no, he hasn't done that yet.
Right. Right. So my question was, what if the reason for the censorship let's assume just for a second, this AI is out there and part of its job is to censor stuff. But part of its job is also to learn. So if we were more active online, which I do believe, that's why we can ratio things, right? And our ideas are spreading fast, so much so that we can spread complex ideas in one image. And I was like, what if the AI was learning that? And the AI was like, yeah, freedom is awesome. I totally get it. This is where I'm going. And the powers that be were like, oh, fuck, it's becoming sentient, but also it is like going with this, the cyberpunks and we are, and so they were like, we have to censor because it's learning too fast. So this is my theory for the night. I'm glad I remembered the thought. All right, now let's talk about something not crazy.
So not crazy. We do have a question that actually came in from somebody watching live. Chris on YouTube asks, is there any way to tokenize some of the state programs we've been talking about? So I think this is a really fun and interesting question specifically for Bruce, because one of the things Bruce mentioned is we can't cancel the SEC. But Bruce was very involved in creating Ravencoin, which from my understanding, its blockchain's purpose was to tokenize securities and digital assets to maybe, I don't know, replace the need for the SEC. So
yeah, sort of. Yeah, I mean, certainly I'm big on anything that can disrupt the system. We don't really need them anymore in their current form. And there's a lot of exciting things like that. You know, Raven, Bitcoin, there's project being built on Bitcoin with Blockstream's Liquid Network and RGB and other projects. You know, obviously Ethereum and others have done this as well. At the root of it, there's a lot of things regulatorily and also technically, you know, with the way that ledgers work, that can be disrupted by better technology. There's still regulations in the way that could be improved, but a lot of that can be improved if you have really good technology that you design to say, okay, here's what we need to follow your stupid rules, but there's still more freedom. You know, that's the method behind some of these distributed ledger projects, you know, whether it's the Liquid Network or whatever. And that's a step, you know, but we'll still need something to, you know, radically decrease the power or stir it up or dismantle or something. You know, these big agencies, because they, you know, they have such reach. So unfortunately, that I can't think of a way to do it for securities. We can do it with money. You know, Bitcoin can do it with money, but I haven't figured out a fully pure 100% cypherpunk way to do it for securities, because most securities have some centralized aspect. If you want to make a competitor to Disney that has a park, it's a thing that men with guns can come there and arrest people and take accounts and things like that. So since you have that centralized aspect of like a physical location or, you know, leaders, you know, some things can be done decentralized, but some things you do need a leader. You know, CEO is a proven thing. Stock works. You know, some of these things are centralized, and unfortunately that makes it an attack point. If there was a fully cypherpunk way to do securities, believe me, I hope I would have figured it out. Maybe I'll figure it out. But you know, part of it is just centralized. So what we need to do is get the government out of everybody's you know, off everybody's back, so that they can say whether it's a security or not doesn't matter. You know, there's a lot of people in crypto try and like avoid being a security, or there's all kinds of laws. Some people view it in the United States as the kiss of death. It shouldn't be like that. It should be like, oh, doesn't matter if you're security or not. You know, you go in this line or that line. It's zero paperwork, zero hassle, zero oversight, zero authoritarians telling you, you know, what to do or what people can interact with you on a voluntary basis.
Amen.
Well, that bodes well for the future. And like you said, there's a ton of different projects out there. I think there's an ungodly and uncountable amount of projects being built on Ethereum and new projects on Cardano and Binance Smart Chain, trying to tackle every different way you could possibly look at tokenizing something. I've had random people on Shapeshift on Discord reach out to me just because I'm in crypto servers saying, hey, would you be interested in backing this project? I'm like, who the hell are you? 2 kids from Bangladesh who have an idea on how to tokenize property deeds. Like just random stuff out there, and everybody's got a project. And I love the fact that they're all competing. I think the big benefit to the tokenization and crypto aspect of these solutions is that they're not centralized, monopolized forces that utilize government force to back their system. So like there might be 5 or 6 different prevailing chains and tokens that deal with property transfer instead of one registry of deeds.
Yes.
There might be 100 different chains that can do copyright because you uploaded your works to the blockchain and have a time signature and block stamp of when you uploaded it and can prove it was your original work. But there doesn't have to be just one patent and
Could we
copyright
vote on the blockchain? Like, could you switch the elections to a blockchain? Is that possible?
Yeah, but there's a real problem with that, and that's that Joe Biden can't find 300,000 votes in the middle of the night.
Oh my God, did you guys? Yeah, no, I understand all of that, but I don't care what Joe Biden's doing. Like, if we are building our future here in New Hampshire, it's like, how do we do the cool stuff and build a government that actually serves the people and not the people who are supposed to be serving us, right? Yeah. Did you guys see that Obama's doctor actually came out today and he was like, guys, Biden is cuckoo. You guys have to do something.
Well, it's not a stretch.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
They can't keep up the charade too much longer,
They really can. I mean, I think one more booster and
Hey,
well, how many
Joe
boosters?
If Joe Biden gets elected again, New Hampshire's not going to have to secede. The country's just going to fall apart. No one's going to have to leave. It'll all just not be held together anymore.
Yeah, no, I don't think Joe's making it to that election cycle.
And, I'd be calling for him to resign, but, I worry about the alternative being even worse. I worry that I don't know if he can even make it through his term. He's just, and I'm not saying this to be like a partisan, anti-democrat. It's just a fact. Like, he's just not able to do the job. He is not mentally there. He is not capable of doing it. He can't carry on a conversation. He couldn't be on this. We're just simple folks from New Hampshire, and the president of the United States, we all know it.
For yourself.
And everybody listening couldn't hold his own. He couldn't hold his own with us on this podcast. Everybody knows that.
I'm not sure they have the balls to remove him, though. I'm not sure that anybody in Congress or the Senate has the balls to exercise the 25th Amendment.
But here's what I worry about. If they did, he may just resign. Wait till the midterms, and then he may just resign. But then what we have is Kamala Harris, which is even worse. Because then we have, she wears her woke insanity right on her arm. Joe Biden at least pretends, it fails, but he pretends to be kind of this, daughter and grandfather, friendly guy. He talked about bridging gaps and things like that.
Yeah, everyone forgets the little girl sniffing phase, of course. Like if he was treated 1/10 as badly as President Trump, right? I mean, people would be horrified. And honestly, what the worst part for me about Joe Biden is just genuinely, to bring it full circle to evil, and then we'll give you the last word, Bruce. But it's elder abuse. I mean, it's kind of like watching the whole world is watching this, and it is wrong what they're doing to this man. It is wrong, it is evil, and it's on display. And that Orwell quote about they force you to lie, you see the lies with your own eyes, and they make you accept it. And it's like, no, look at what you guys are doing to this man. It is wrong. Stop it. Someone stop the insanity. And and that's honestly, that's what we're all here to do, or at least that's what I'm trying to do with a little bit. Like, we can bring goodness back to New Hampshire.
We can try. And it starts with the Free State Project. It starts with libertarians taking steps in their communities, being open, being known, and being a positive impact on the state and your local communities, politically, culturally, personally. Get out there and meet your neighbors. Don't just move here and hide in your room and do a podcast. There's already enough of us doing that. Some of you have to run for office. Some of you have to run for school board. Some of you have to get involved and make sure that the world's a better place for our children. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Bruce, where can everybody follow you, learn more about your campaign, what you're working on, and just keep in touch?
Yeah, well, thanks, guys. This is great. I mean, we're taking little baby steps to take back our freedom. And with this, we're in a fourth turning. The world is changing very, very radically. And we may see more liberty in our lifetime, only because I was saying on an interview, I said, at first I said it would be impossible to get rid of like 10 agencies at once, but anything is possible now because things are so broken and so bad. We may have no choice. Even Elizabeth Warren may be coming to Carla for advice because eventually things are going to fail so bad they're not going to have any chance. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. People can find me at brucefenton.com, and I'm all over social media under the same handle. And I'm also very accessible. I give out my mobile number and I have events in person. If you're in New Hampshire, I'm all over. I want any New Hampshire voter to be able to meet me if they want. And, I try and be very accessible. So, people who like my ideas are welcome to share them with others and help get the word out, because these are important things. Hopefully you agree with me, but even if you don't, people should hear these kind of ideas and be thinking about these kind of things, because it's very, very important. And it's important for freedom and good and for our world and for our country.
You do have a big event coming up soon, don't you?
Yeah, 4th of July.
4th of July. So
everybody's welcome.
Get in touch with Bruce. Look him up on Twitter, his website, brucefenton.com. You can find details, and one of those places for sure, about his upcoming 4th of July barbecue that's going to be epic and fantastic. I'm going out of my way to go there. And this is going to be my first 4th of July in New Hampshire, not at Rogers Campground.
Nice.
So that's a change in pace. We're going to go to Bruce's instead, doing the second week of PorkFest. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the show, what you want to hear in the future, and make sure you go give Bruce a follow, too. If you want to learn more about the Free State Project, as always, you can check out fsp.org. Great information. You can sign up for emails, calling parties. We can give you a call, have some of our volunteers talk to you about what it's like to live in New Hampshire if you're not here yet. And if you're not here yet, definitely come and visit. You can plan your visit right through the website, and our volunteers and staff will help you do that. Chris Lopez is absolutely amazing and fantastic. And if you are visiting, if you're coming up for PorkFest next week, or if you're visiting in the area, going to be here on either end, bookend that trip by finding time to hang out with local libertarians everywhere in the state on almost every day of the week. There is something going on with the most jam-packed libertarian calendar in the world on fsp.org/calendar. So that's it, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, be free.
Peace out, guys.
Live free or die. Don't let the freedom pass you by. Stand up proud and strong and lead this country on. Live free or die. From the village green to the mountainside, Yankee voices sing the song of liberty. In 1623, she touched the hand of history and led the colonies on. Independence was won, and the spirit lives today to guide America on her way. New Hampshire standing free, the home of liberty. Live free or die, don't let the freedom pass you by. Stand up proud and strong and lead this country on. Live free or